Most men remain broke not because the world is a cruel place, but because they have fallen in love with a story that protects their fragile dignity. You've heard the phrases, the market is saturated, the competition is too fierce, or the big players have already locked everything down. These excuses are seductive because they sound like sophisticated analysis. And they allow you to sit at a bar or scroll through your phone, feeling like an intellectual who truly understands the harsh reality of the economy. In truth, these words are nothing more than a shield, a form of polite internal language used to mask a fundamental lack of courage and competence. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than anyone when he noted that many men attribute their failures to fortuna, or bad luck, rather than their own lack of preparation. Yet he argued that while luck may control half of our actions, the other half is left for us to direct through our own skill and audacity. A weak mind cannot tolerate the weight of absolute responsibility, so it must outsource its failure to an abstract enemy that cannot argue back. When you claim a market is too small or too crowded, what you are actually whispering to yourself is that if you admit the problem is your own lack of skill, you would be forced to change. And then you are simply too comfortable to do the work. This is not a business strategy. It is a survival mechanism for the ego. Wealth does not flow to those who find the most open market, but to those who know how to command attention, manufacture desire, and apply relentless pressure until the environment bends to their will. There is no shortage of customers in this world, only a shortage of individuals with the stomach to lead. This distinction is the line between the masters and the masses. If you do not grasp this, you will spend your remaining years rotating through the same tired excuses, growing older and more bitter, but never more powerful. The lie of the saturated market is dangerous because it wears the clothes of logic. It allows you to appear rational rather than terrified. As Machiavelli famously observed in The Prince, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, rather than a lion to frighten wolves. Most men are neither. They are sheep who have convinced themselves that the grass is simply gone. But reality is a cold, indifferent judge. If you aren't growing, the walls aren't closing in. You are simply unskilled. Skill is the only true bottleneck in the pursuit of power. Consider the rise of Jay-Z in the early 90s. At the time, the record industry was arguably at its most saturated point, dominated by massive labels with bottomless pockets. But a weaker man would have looked at that field and declared it impossible to enter. Instead, when no label would sign him, he didn't complain about the unfair gatekeepers. He sold CDs out of his trunk and started Rockefeller Records. He didn't look for a gap in the market. He forced his way into the center of it by sheer operational competence. He understood that the environment produces winners and losers, not because it favors one group, but because perception filters what we see as possible. While the average person looks at a crowded field and counts the number of opponents, the high performer looks at that same field and counts the number of angles. Most people never truly see the field at all. They see only the narrow strip of land directly in front of their feet, one platform, one way of selling, one version of a customer. When that tiny path stops producing easy money, they panic and claim they've reached the limit. In reality, they've only reached the edge of their own intelligence. The market is a vast, fragmented landscape of human attention. People are constantly moving across different platforms, consuming information at different speeds, and experiencing different levels of desire. To reach them requires a level of patience, repetition, and tactical adaptation that an ego-driven mind finds repulsive. It is far easier to declare the game unwinnable than to admit you are playing it like an amateur. This is why so many businesses stall at a mediocre level. They refuse to face the truth that expansion requires a personal evolution. It requires the discomfort of looking incompetent while you learn a new trade. The ego cannot endure this phase of becoming, so it invents a narrative of retreat. The market becomes the villain, and competition becomes the excuse. But blood in the water is not a warning, it is evidence of a feast. Saturated markets are crowded because that is where the money is. Only the timid interpret competition as danger. Those who seek dominance recognize it as proof of value. If you feel trapped, it is not because the walls are close. It is because your vision is narrow, and a narrow vision is a choice. The first step toward power is to abandon the lies that keep you comfortable, and the second is to accept that your current limits are entirely self-imposed. If you are ready to stop making excuses and start building the skills that the top 1% use to dominate, then make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of high performers who are committed to mastery and long-term growth. We are building a tribe of men who understand that power is taken, not given. Before we move into how to actually dismantle the competition, I want to hear from you. Comment the word responsibility below if you are ready to stop blaming the market and start refining your own skill. There is a moment every serious operator must face. A moment when your excuses finally collapse under their own weight. This is the moment you realize that what you've been calling the market is actually just a thin layer of people who happen to cross your path by convenience. This realization is brutal because it strips away your final refuge of denial. You didn't exhaust the demand for what you sell. You exhausted your own ability to reach it. Most men have never actually accessed the market at all. They've merely interacted with a fraction of it so small that calling it a market is an insult to reality. You post on one platform, use one format, and repeat one message until you get tired, and then you mistake your own fatigue for market saturation. When your results slow down, you declare the opportunity dead. In truth, only your competence has expired. Machiavelli noted that a man who is used to acting in one way never changes, yet he must come to ruin when the times, in changing, no longer suit his ways. The market isn't reached by just showing up. It is reached by sustained, intelligent, and adaptive pressure. This is where most men fail. They appear briefly and timidly, then retreat the second they feel resistance. They confuse simple activity with actual leverage. Influence isn't created by being seen once. It is created by occupying mental space repeatedly across multiple contexts. If you think you've tapped your market, you've likely only spoken to the loudest and least valuable segment, the people who are already searching and comparing. They are easy to find, which is why everyone is hunting them, making them the most difficult to convert. Above them lies a far larger population, the unaware, the uncertain, and the emotionally unprepared. Reaching them requires a level of narrative discipline and patience that most men simply don't possess. They stay where it's familiar, and they mistake that familiarity for mastery. A man who only knows how to speak to buyers who are already looking for a solution isn't a businessman. He's a clerk waiting behind a counter, blaming the foot traffic when sales drop. True power belongs to those who create movement where none existed before. Control comes from coordination, knowing how your message compounds across different channels to build a sense of inevitability. Most people are too lazy to build this structure, so they claim they can't scale. There's no shame in not knowing what to do next, but there is a massive danger in pretending the market is the problem. Consider the strategy of Bernard Arnault, the man behind LVMH. When he first entered the luxury goods sector, the industry was a collection of fragmented family-owned brands. Many thought the market for high-end fashion was fixed and limited. Arnault, we often called the wolf in cashmere, didn't see a saturated market. He saw a disorganized one. He used ruthless pressure and strategic acquisition to consolidate power, moving from one brand to the next, ignoring the unwritten rules of the industry. He understood that blood in the water isn't a warning, it's a confirmation of value. Only territories rich in resources inspire conflict. No army marches toward a barren desert, and no serious competitor enters a market where there is nothing to be taken. Yet, when the average man sees red water, heavy competition, he retreats. He thinks resistance means he doesn't belong. This instinct disqualifies him before the fight even starts. Power is acquired through confrontation, not avoidance. A crowded market signals that money is changing hands and that demand exists at scale. The disciplined man doesn't ask, "Why is everyone here?" He asks, "What are they all missing?" Crowded arenas expose the inefficiency of your rivals. When many people compete, they get lazy. They take shortcuts, their messages become identical, and they start copying each other out of pure exhaustion. This is where dominance is forged. You don't win by shouting louder in the same direction as everyone else. You win by attacking from the angles they are too tired to defend, while the masses rush to where the attention is already hot. As the strategist looks for where it can be redirected, red oceans offer a specific bargain: discomfort in exchange for massive expansion. If you understand power, you accept this trade without a second thought. You know that competition sharpens your skills, and that when your rivals eventually retreat because they can't handle the heat, the territory becomes yours for the taking. The paradox of the red ocean is that it's only crowded at the surface. If you are willing to outwork, outlearn, and outlast the others, you will find vast open space exactly where everyone else saw danger. Before we dive into how you can identify these undefended territories and begin your expansion, I want to see who is actually paying attention. Comment the word pressure below as an affirmation that you are ready to apply the kind of force necessary to dominate your field. This simple act of engagement locks in the lesson and separates you from the passive scrollers. The niche was never meant to be your home. It was meant to be your proving ground. Many men misunderstand this and mistake containment for strategy. They enter a narrow market not to sharpen their edge, but to hide from the brutal winds of open competition. Over time, their fear disguises itself as a principle of focus. What began as a tactical choice hardens into a permanent limitation, and this is exactly how small players justify staying small forever. But you must understand that a niche exists to reduce variables while you are still building your basic skills. It is a controlled environment that allows a weaker force to survive long enough to learn the mechanics of the game. It provides clearer messaging and faster feedback, but it is not a destination. Training grounds are temporary by design. The disciplined man understands this instinctively. He chooses a narrow territory so he can dominate it with lightning speed, while using that space to master the dark arts of pricing power, operational control, and psychological leverage. Once that mastery is achieved, he expands without a shred of sentiment. Machiavelli warned that he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is the agent of his own ruin. If you stay in your niche too long, you are simply providing a stable environment for a more ambitious predator to eventually come and take it from you. The undisciplined grow attached to their small ponds. They begin to romanticize their niche, speaking of authenticity and staying true, while they are quietly terrified of what lies beyond the borders. They mistake the comfort of being a big fish in a puddle for true wisdom. In reality, they have simply adapted to a cage they now refuse to leave. Power does not respect attachment, it respects momentum. A niche that once served as your shield will eventually become your suffocation if you refuse to move. So the signs of decay are always the same. Your growth slows down. You find yourself repeating the same tired moves, and your innovation dies. The purpose of early constraint is not safety. It is preparation. The gladiator does not train in a ludus because he wants to live there. He trains there so he can survive the Colosseum. Those who never leave the training ground never test their strength, and those who never test their strength never gain true authority. Now, the most dangerous operators treat niches as phases, not identities. They extract every ounce of value and every lesson the environment can teach them, and then they advance. They don't ask for permission or wait for absolute certainty. They move the moment the resistance no longer sharpens them. Expansion isn't a betrayal of your roots. It is the natural evolution of power. Markets do not reward loyalty to a small idea. They reward effectiveness at scale. To move from a niche to a broader empire, you must choose a specific path of force. Power expands through deliberate movement, not by accident. Most men who stagnate don't lack opportunity. They lack a map. They react to whatever deal falls in their lap, which isn't flexibility. It's surrender. A strategist chooses where to apply his pressure. There are 5 primary directions to expand your territory. First, you can ascend, moving up market. This is where you trade volume for massive leverage. These customers are fewer and more demanding, but they possess disproportionate wealth. To serve them, you must replace your youthful enthusiasm with cold precision and undeniable authority. Second, you can descend, moving down market to trade margin for sheer scale. This is an industrial path built on automation and the ability to endure relentless repetition and thin margins. Third, you can move adjacent, crossing into related territories. This is conquest through familiarity. But you don't reinvent yourself. You repurpose your existing systems for a new audience. Look at how Amazon didn't just stay a bookstore. They realized their real power was in logistics and distribution, so they moved adjacently into every physical product on Earth. They didn't change their principles, they just changed their targets. The fourth path is to broaden your scope entirely, transforming from a specialist into a general authority. This turns you into a symbol rather than a mere solution, but it requires a foundation so strong that it won't dilute under the weight of the masses. Finally, you can narrow even further, deepening your control over an ultra-specific domain until you are completely irreplaceable. This is precision warfare, where you create a monopoly of trust that vanishes the very idea of a competitor. These 5 paths are not equal, and you cannot walk them all at once. To attempt everything is to dilute your force until you are weak everywhere. But the mistake of the failure is refusing to choose. They drift and react, calling their indecision openness. But as Machiavelli pointed out, neutrality is always more the pity than the help. Markets reward intent, not openness. Power expands where pressure is applied consistently. You must choose your direction, accept the inherent costs, and move without offering an apology to anyone. Take a moment to reflect on your own position. If you look at these 5 paths, ascending, descending, moving adjacent, broadening, or narrowing, which one aligns most with your current strengths, and what is the one thing stopping you from committing to it today? Share your reflection in the comments. Putting these thoughts into words is the first step toward moving from a passive observer to a strategic operator. Every business is dirty, and the sooner you accept this, the sooner you can start winning. There is no sanitized path to power. There are only different forms of filth that you must be willing to endure. Those who fail often do so because they believed a lethal fantasy. They imagine that somewhere there exists a business model without friction, one that scales smoothly, attracts perfect clients, and grows without resistance. This is a lie. While every enterprise is built on a specific form of discomfort, the question is never whether a business is clean, but whether you can tolerate its specific brand of dirt long enough to extract wealth. Inexperience mistakes friction for failure. But as Machiavelli noted in the Discourses, men never do anything good except by necessity. Difficulty isn't a sign that something is wrong. It is the admission price for the arena. Our service businesses are dirty with the unpredictability of human behavior. Hiring, training, and replacing people in an endless, exhausting cycle. If you cannot command people, stay out of service. Product-based businesses are dirty with the logistics of inventory and the fragility of supply chains. Software is dirty with the slow, invisible crawl of development where profits are delayed for years. Information businesses are dirty with the instability of fickle attention. There is no superior model. Only different burdens. The strategic error is choosing a business whose specific dirt you resent. because resentment poisons execution and makes you look for an escape rather than dominance. Consider the path of Larry Ellison during the early days of Oracle. He didn't build a trillion-dollar empire by finding a nice or easy market. He embraced the absolute filth of the early enterprise software industry, constant legal battles, our aggressive sales tactics that bordered on the predatory and technical debt that would have broken a lesser man. He didn't pivot when things got messy. He leaned into the mess because he understood that the dirt was the barrier to entry that kept his competitors weak. Most men switch paths the moment they hit the difficult phase because the idea of a new direction is intoxicating. It promises renewal without repair and progress without patience. But switching is often just retreat disguised as ambition. When you abandon your position, you reset the clock to zero. You surrender your only real advantage, accumulated momentum. Momentum is invisible until it's gone, and every year you spend in one pursuit compounds your knowledge, your reputation, and your authority. Speed at the bottom is meaningless. Power is cumulative. It belongs to those who stack advantages in the same arena for decades, and not those who chase the excitement of a new beginning every 6 months. As Machiavelli observed, the change of one thing always leaves a two-thing for the next change, leading to a cycle of perpetual starting that never reaches the finish line. Your language is the ultimate confession of your power or your lack of it. The words you choose are not accidents. They reveal exactly where you have placed responsibility for your life. Of those who lack control speak as though outcomes are imposed upon them, while those who command power speak as though outcomes are shaped by them. When you say the market is too competitive, you aren't describing reality. You are announcing your abdication of the throne. You are declaring that forces outside yourself dictate your results. To reclaim power, you must redefine your language with surgical precision. Replace "leads are too expensive" with "I have not yet learned how to lower my acquisition costs." Replace "good people are impossible to find" with "I do not yet know how to attract and retain talent." This shift is ruthless because it leaves no room for self-pity or comforting narratives. It forces you to confront your own inadequacy, but that confrontation is the only gateway to skill. Language determines behavior, and behavior compounds into fate. And the top 1% monitor their internal dialogue like a hawk, treating words as tools for conquest rather than cushions for their ego. They know that saying "I can't" closes a door, while saying "I don't know how yet" opens a path to mastery. This brings us to the final reckoning, the single question that most men spend an entire lifetime avoiding because it is so unforgiving. Do you want to be right, or do you want to win? The weak choose being right, and they spend their energy defending their circumstances and explaining why success was unlikely for them. They protect their self-image while quietly surrendering their territory. Being right feels dignified, but winning requires the humiliation of admitting you were ignorant. It demands that you accept responsibility for outcomes you would rather blame on luck or the economy. It requires you to endure periods where your effort vastly exceeds your reward and where you are misunderstood by everyone around you. The strong reject the consolation of a good excuse. They understand that power is rarely fair and never distributed evenly, so they don't waste time arguing with reality. They ask how to operate within it. If you choose comfort, the world will allow you to remain small and well-explained. If you choose power, the world will resist you. And that resistance is the proof that your choice was real. You can have the dignity of a well-justified failure or the cold reality of a hard-won victory. You cannot have both. If you are one of the few who chooses victory over vindication, then you belong with us. Subscribe and join our growing community of operators who have abandoned the comfort of excuses to pursue absolute mastery. We are building a tribe of men who understand that wealth is a byproduct of skill and that power is the only currency that matters in the end. To finish this lesson and lock in your commitment, comment the word "winner" below. Let it be a marker of the moment you decided to stop being right and start being powerful.